The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's the 6th of January, 2025. I've got to get used to saying that. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined today by our managing editor, Matt Shodell, as we discuss the news of the day. And Matt, we have a lot to talk about. There's been a lot of transfer portal activity here at the U in recent days, and we haven't really had the opportunity to summarize and discuss it for everybody. So I thought that would be a great plan of attack for this morning. So let's start out with the fact that 13 Miami players have exited in the transfer portal. You've got a running back of Jay Allen, safety Jaden Harris, who was a starter the entire season, cornerback Deani Hill, who played an enormous amount this year, wide receiver Isaiah Horton, who was a starter, running back Chris Johnson Jr., buried on the depth chart, wide receiver Shamar Kirk, dropped that ball in the bowl game, a critical drop, was sent to the portal shortly thereafter. Quarterback Reese Poffenbarger, just not really a place here at Miami. Cornerback Robert Stafford, never could get anything going from the time he signed. Same thing for defensive back Isaiah Thomas, offensive lineman Frankie Tinalau, offensive lineman Antonio Tripp, defensive back Robbie Washington, and tight end Riley Williams. So, Matt, let me start there. I think in a perfect world, you certainly don't lose Isaiah Horton, and you certainly don't lose Riley Williams. But when you factor everything in, and we'll talk about who came in on the flip side, it really could have been a lot worse for Miami. They really did a hell of a job, I felt, in keeping their players. In some cases, they probably had to redo some NIL deals and things like that. But they decided they were going to invest in their current roster quite a bit and make sure they kept their guys. I like the strategy. You're going to say no surprise, I'm sure. But your thoughts on just Miami's ability to keep the bulk of its roster in place here in a college football world where that is nothing to be taken for granted.
Well, transfer portal, the initials are TP, and it's about as productive as toilet paper for a lot of teams, because as you look at this is just real talk, right? For Miami, they've gone into the transfer portal as they do, and you lose players as you do. And what you want to say, or see, I should say, is the team now better position by position? So at quarterback, they're not as good. At running back, they lost their top back, and they didn't get a replacement in the portal. So they have a couple of guys who were backups last year who I think will be very good, but they lost their top guy, who's a 1,000-yard rusher, an NFL guy. Receiver, they're not going to be, I don't think, as good, right? I mean, you had three really good receivers, 4 if you include Isaiah Horton. 3 if you include Isaiah Horton, 4 if you include Sam Brown. But obviously the backups they had, they didn't think were as good as those 4 guys, right? Tight end, you lost an NFL guy. You have back a guy who could be really good, but you don't know. The offensive line, you lost 2 of your best offensive linemen, and you replaced them. You got a new center, Brockermeyer, who to me is like somewhere between Matt Lee and Carpenter, not elite, but good. And does that make them better when you lose Jalen Rivers, who's probably your best offensive lineman? Probably not. So every position on offense, even with the portal additions, is not as good. Every position is not as good as last year's team on offense, okay? Now on defense, right, they added Blay from a minor program, but who did really well and looks good on film, okay? But you know what? So did CJ Clark, so did Tyler Barron. Those guys didn't produce the way we thought they would, right? So you don't know at the next level how he's going to do either. You got Messidor and Bain back, which is great. But would you say the defense line is better as we sit here today than it was last year when you had Simeon Barrow, who was probably their most consistent defense lineman, is gone? Who are your defensive tackles, right? Blay and who? So I'd argue defense line maybe has potential to be better, but as on paper right now, pretty similar. I wouldn't say it's worse. I wouldn't say it's better.
Moten, Justin Scott.
Right. Moten's Justin Scott has to come through. Moten's, he's good. He's not going to get that much better, right? He's been around forever. Linebacker, you lose your top linebacker. Jalen Alderman didn't answer the bell, who they brought in from the portal a year ago. They haven't bought it. They'll bring in another linebacker, but you got to hope like maybe Popo Aguirre, maybe Cam or Bobby Pruitt or whatever the heck his first name is, will come through. I don't know. Linebacker, you lose your top linebacker who was, a little bit spotty last year, but at best, they're pretty similar at linebacker, right? So now they're pretty similar at linebacker. They're pretty similar at defensive line on paper with 10 additions from the portal already. They're worse, in my opinion, at every position on offense than they were a year ago. Right now, as we sit here right now, on offense. Now, the big area that they've really improved is in the secondary. They're much better right now, much, much better in the secondary. Now, will that offset the fact that they're worse at every position on offense as we sit here right now? They have to get a quarterback, obviously. We don't know who that's going to be. Maybe that, it won't be Cam Ward level. They'll still be worse, but maybe that will get the offense to be decent. And if the secondary can be great, then maybe you have a chance. I don't know. But as we sit here today, and you want to analyze the portal additions and how great they are, these portal, what a great portal class. They're ranked number 4 or whatever in the portal additions. These portal rankings are nonsense, right? One of their top portal ranking guys is a guy who didn't even start. Zechariah Poyser. It wasn't even a starter, and he's a top-rated portal guy. Like, these rankings are meaningless. How they perform next year is guesswork based off film from lower-level opponents a lot of times, and height and weight. And and maybe what you hear from some people around the guy, and that's it. And you need that position, right? So let's take a chance. I would argue Brantley would be a free agent if he's fully healthy. We don't know if he will be. He's going to miss the spring. You get Xavier Lucas. He's obviously a free agent, right? But these are defensive backs, and
he's not even in the portal yet. Let's add,
right? If he goes in the portal, and these are if he makes it in the portal, he's trying to go in the portal. So anyway, the secondary, you got OJ Frederick back. Fantastic. You added Brantley, great. Carnley was the guy who didn't start. Sorry, my bad. Cornerback Carnley. Poyser did start, but at a lower level. Carnley's the guy they added who didn't start, right? O'Connor, I think, can be really good, but 7 penalties last year in 12 games isn't great. He's just really fast, very aggressive, but has a lot of penalties called on him. And he's very young. So, I don't know that he would start this year. I know everyone's very high on him, but I just, just watching him on film, he had some busts and this and that. I don't know. But as much as you added a cornerback, because the corners were terrible last year, you've definitely upgraded your cornerbacks a lot. But now at safety, what have they done, right? They got Poyser, who is at a lower level, and maybe he'll be good, but he's a redshirt. I think he's going to be a redshirt sophomore. He's played 1 year at a lower level program, right? And then you're hoping Zaquan Patterson will come through, maybe a Dylan Day. I would argue that safety, we don't know. As bad as safety was last year with Mish Powell and Jaden Harris, we don't know that it's going to be that much better. These are not guys where I could say, oh, yeah, they're definitely that much better. At corner, I'm confident in saying they're better. So the only position Miami has gotten better at in the portal and with guys returning that we know for sure is at cornerback. And that's partially because Mario is taking transfer guys every year who just leave. They just leave. And now you don't know what you have. And that's why we're sitting here today. And Miami fans might seem like they should be optimistic. They might think they should be optimistic. But the truth is you haven't gotten better at any position on the team from where we were a month ago, except for cornerback. And to me, just being a realist, that's concerning to me. I don't know that anyone out there who knows this team would argue with me that they're better at any other position right now as we sit here than they were a month ago personnel-wise. And right now in the portal, who's left? Who's left in the portal they're going to get? Maybe if Lucas can squeeze into the portal, great. Again, but I already said cornerback's a much, much improved position. And other than that, I don't know. The quarterback, whoever they get, is not going to be as good as Cam Ward. I'm sorry, because that's you don't find the top quarterback in the country every year.
Yeah, that's not going to be.
Where are they better? You tell me where they're better. And now the schedule's tougher, and so this is why fans are concerned. Now, with that said, the key is going to be the young guys that we don't know, the red flag, the question marks. Those guys. If they can finally come through, if Mario lets them actually play, and if they do great, then this team is a playoff team. But as we sit here now, we're not going to know it. And you know what? We probably won't know, honestly, until the first game of next season. We probably won't know if this team's terrible, average, good, or great. It's going to be one of the big mysteries because this is what NIL has done to fans, to the Miami Hurricanes, to media who are trying to explain to fans why we think a team will be good or not. No idea. We have no idea. This is the biggest mystery team I've ever seen as we sit here right now, a month from spring practice, because it seems to me like every position's gotten worse, but then again, maybe every position's better. But these guys haven't had a chance because Mario's buried them. Even in the bowl game, he's buried them, I mean, Justin Scott, a 5-star who's one of the biggest freak athletes for his size, played like 120 reps all year, and then backup, as the fourth defensive tackle, someone as the fifth defensive tackle, set out a game. I mean, I can't really.
I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, we have no.
What I'm trying to say is, I can't sit here and say it's been a great portal haul, even though they're ranked fourth in the portal and everyone's excited about it. I just can't sit here and say, oh yeah, because now look at every position is so much better. No, the positions are worse than they were a year ago.
We don't know that. We don't know that. I mean,
on paper they are.
People are going to accuse you of being a little bit negative again, but you're not wrong totally. I mean, it's like we don't have a clue how good Justin Scott is going to be or not be. We think he's going to be good. He was a 5-star recruit. It seems like the future's bright for him.
By the way, in other programs, these true freshmen come in and make big impacts, right? And at Miami, it seems like OJ Frederick did, but it just seems like it's not that he crossed the board thing where you get a 5-line is a tough place. Francis Mauanoa did a year ago, but it's not like these multiple 5-star freshmen, these fantastic classes he's landed, are making impacts yet. And if it doesn't start this year, I don't know when it's going to start, quite honestly.
Well, defensive tackle is a tough place for a true freshman to make an impact. But in fairness, this is part of the failure of Lance Guidry. I mean, he was playing Mesidor inside. Mesidor had a very pedestrian season, in my opinion. Really, even when he went outside, was just so. And that's a guy that they're going to count on to really come on strong for next year. They got to have Mesidor being the player that they felt that he was when they brought him here from West Virginia. And if that's going to be a critical element to next season. Ruben Bain. I mean, what's the new defensive coordinator, whoever it ends up being, going to do with Ruben Bain? Do you look at Ruben Bain and say, I got to move this guy inside? Or do you pacify Ruben Bain and keep him outside, where, quite honestly, whether you want to blame Lance Guidry or not, it's fine. But Ruben Bain was not the same player as a sophomore that he was as a freshman. He had individual plays where he was good, but in terms of a down-by-down consistent basis, he was just not. And that has to change next year. So when you say better, some of that better, Matt, is going to have to come from within, with guys like that playing to the level that you felt that they were going to be when you recruited them. But I want to go through it here a little bit in detail and either, contest what you said or back it up. We'll kick it around, but I'm going to go position by position. Okay, quarterbacks. There is no chance that quarterback was going to be better in 2025 than it was in 2024. There just is not another Cam Ward out there. Now, as we sit here this morning, Miami has not yet taken a quarterback in the portal. I think they still plan to take a quarterback in the portal. We just don't know who that's going to be. Now, something is going to happen at Texas when their season ends. Okay. And the speculation is that Quinn Ewers is not going to be the starter next year. I don't understand how they've declared this already, Matt. They're competing for the national title. The kid, had a pretty good playoff game when I watched them. And I don't know how you decide, no matter what happens with us here this season, even if we win the national title with Quinn Ewers, he is not going to be our quarterback next year, because we got Arch Manning sitting over here on the bench for 2 years now. We can't let that happen for a third year. And it seems a little bit problematic to me, but one of those two guys figures to not be at Texas next year. Okay, the speculation is it's going to be Ewers. If he goes into the portal, Miami is going to have a big decision to make. He is going to command a lot of money. Now, I'm sure he wants to go to the NFL. I've heard he's got a mid to late round draft grade, that it would be very much in his interest to come back to college on a big NIL deal. He might command $4 million on the open market. Not out of the question. Does Miami decide to be a player in that game? Another guy that's kind of sitting over here, who, again, his NFL draft grades are not great, and now he's hurt, is Carson Beck. He declared for the NFL. As you noted the other day, that means absolutely nothing. Okay. If he does open himself up to NIL bidders, which I believe he will, does Miami get into that game? So do they fish in the expensive seas for a quarterback? And I I don't know who else is going to come available at this moment. Maybe somebody else will. Jaden Rashada went back in the portal. I don't know if Miami decides to turn back the clock with him. It hadn't gone so well since he decided not to honor his Miami commitment. Boy, is he going to be a textbook case for how to mismanage the transfer portal for many, many years to come. But I'm guessing they won't go back there. So they are going to be looking to see what quarterbacks go into the portal here over the next, week or so. When as more teams stop playing, the kids have 5 days to declare. We'll see what happens. I don't want to make a prediction. They chose not to get into a bidding war for Zachariah Branch and his brother, who ended up going to Georgia. If Miami wanted to have a shot there, they probably would have had to dive into the number I heard was 1.5 million was what his asking price was. They decided they weren't getting into a bidding war for him. Okay, the price tag was too high. Whatever Georgia ended up paying him, they landed him. Is Miami stockpiling NIL funds to go get a quarterback? We don't know. That's not something that's going to be discussed out for public consumption. It certainly looks like they might be, but again, a lot's going to depend what happens, who becomes available. There was a lot of speculation about the USC quarterback going into portal. He never went in the portal. So we'll see what happens there. But I would agree with you. It's going to be very hard for quarterback to be better in 2025 than 2024. Running backs, no moves to this point. Obviously, it's going to be the Lyle and Fletcher show next year, as it should be. You'll have Pringle coming in. You still have Wheatley Humphrey there. And you always have the option of Elijah Lofton dropping into that backfield from time to time and helping out at running back. He looked very effective doing that last year in the spring and fall. He's a bigger guy. It'd be a different look, but he could certainly fill in at running back in a pinch if necessary. And that. So the running back position with Damian Martinez out is certainly not better than it was last year. I have to agree with you at running back too, but it's not anything to be worried about right now, as long as everybody stays healthy. Tight ends, you're losing Arroyo, you're losing Riley Williams, your top two tight ends. You've recruited extremely well at the position. And then they went out and signed the kid that I really like by the name of Alex Bauman. He's from Tulane, had really good numbers at Tulane, is a really reliable kid. He doesn't drop the football. He can block. I like this transfer portal pickup. Is he as good as Arroyo? Absolutely not. Okay. So what, negative Nancy Matt Shodell is saying in that Miami is not better at any position, really. You can't dispute it at tight end, even though they got a very good player in Bauman, and they've got Elijah Lofton there and a couple really good-looking freshmen that were just signed. So we'll see. We'll see what happens and how those guys develop. But I can't argue with Matt about that either. Now, the position that I want to talk a little bit about is receiver, because you lost Restrepo, you lost Isaiah Horton, you lost Jacoby George. So far, all they've brought in is C.J. Daniels. Matt, definitely not better for sure, but I felt that they need more than C.J. Daniels, and maybe something will develop in the portal that doesn't come with the price tag that Branch did. But I would like to see at least one more playmaker come into the fold. I know we got JoJo Trader and Nikar. Neither one is really proven. It's hard to project those guys at the level of Restrepo and George and Horton and Sam Brown also gone. Your top four receivers are off the roster now. Your thoughts just on the state of the receiver position, and we obviously don't know where they can go from here because we don't know who might come in the portal, but I'm sure you agree with me that they need more at receiver.
Well, they're trying to get a really good slot, and they brought in visits, Concepcion, Singleton, Branch, Rivers. I would say three of those four. I'm not going to say the one I don't like, but three of those four would have been excellent pickups. I mean, outstanding pickups. Mario doesn't want to pay, I guess, over market value. Some of these prices are exorbitant. So maybe you're right. Maybe he's saving the money for a top quarterback. I don't know. But Carson Beck, UCL tears usually take 9 months to really fully be back, which puts you in August, September timeframe. It's supposed to start throwing this spring, but it takes a long time to get your strength back and all that stuff. And it's a major, major injury. So I don't know that he'd be worth the risk of paying a huge price for. Unlike you, I'm hearing Ewers late second round, early third round. You have to pay a fortune to get him. And some fans think he's overrated, because he has so many great playmakers around him. I don't know. I don't know.
He is overrated.
Listen,
but he also might be your best available.
He's the best out there. My hope. And listen, I don't want to be the doom and gloom guy. There's another portal window, right? What Mario doesn't do is rush into decisions, because guess what? If you didn't get a slot receiver you wanted, don't get an average slot receiver and take up that spot and pay money to an average slot receiver. Wait till the second portal window. These agents are constantly calling people, trying to find out, if their guy can get more money somewhere else. You can grab somebody at that point. It's not the end of the world. Even a quarterback, don't just rush out and blow your whole budget on a Quinn Ewers who maybe, isn't going to pan out as a one year guy, and you've just thrown all this money out the window potentially. That could have been for 5 different players that you needed 5 different positions at this point, right? Because, like I said, this is what I'm trying to get at. It's not doom and gloom that they're worse at every position except for cornerback on paper as compared to when the season ended. What they need to do is add talent and develop talent, right? We haven't seen the development part. We've seen the add talent part, right? They got a bunch of good portal guys last year. I would say it was Mario's most successful portal class. But we need to see that development piece, and that needs to happen this year. As long as that happens this year, then all that on paper stuff disappears, right? Because if 5 to 10 of these guys who just haven't played much turn into all ACC type players, then it's off to the races, and this team's going to be great. My point is, we don't know. So as we sit here today, and some people can, I'm sure there's other podcasts out there for those of you that actually like to listen to the good stuff, that'll tell you that, oh my God, every portal guy's amazing that Miami's gotten. They're the greatest. I keep hearing Ethan O'Connor, for example, right? Everyone's talking about how he's the greatest pickup at cornerback ever, and he's going to be amazing, right? And then I study his film because, I'm sure other people study his film also, but you see him get beat by 2 steps on a simple, slant in the end zone by a guy who's slower than him, okay? And you see some issues with him that you just don't love. But he was a second-year player, right? He's a developmental guy. You don't bring in a redshirt freshman who had a decent year and say, okay, now you're the guy. He could be the guy. He could be a backup next year, an emergency guy or whatever, and develop and then be the starter the following year. Not every portal guy has to start for 1 year and be gone, like has been the case a lot of these people that Mario's been taking. It's actually better not to do that. It's almost like you're recruiting again when you take younger guys who can still be here for 2 or 3 years. That's what they need, is not just a guy who's here for 1 year and gone and has taken your money, taken $1 million out of your piggy bank for 1 year, and he's gone. Because guess what? All that money Mario Cristobal spent last year was thrown into the wind because the season was a waste, in my opinion. If you're not in the playoffs, you did not do your job, okay? You just spent $10 million of my money as a fan, and you didn't do your job.
There was a lot of entertainment value.
When you have Mario Cristobal's bankroll that he put into that team last year, and when you have all the money that was given to Mario Cristobal to take over the program, and all the money his coaches were paid, and now you're on the 3rd defense coordinator, and you're on your 2nd offensive coordinator, and it just doesn't seem to be working. That's why fans are so angry at the end of the season, even though you won 10 games and should have won 11 if Cam Moore decided to play the last half. That's why fans are angry, because they expect a return on the investment that's been made in this program, in this football program, and they're not seeing it. They're not seeing the development of Samson Okunlola, the 5-star who was the can't-miss NFL prospect. They're not seeing the development of, you bring in Popo Aguirre and Bobby Pruitt, these guys who are standing out big time in spring and fall practices. They barely play. JoJo Trader, who's making a highlight catch, just catches the ball by one hand just for fun, in practices in the spring that we're watching, right? He barely sees the field. And Sam Brown's out there dropping passes. This is what makes fans crazy. And I understand coaches, and I've said it last show, coaches want to play the experienced players to their own detriment sometimes. And in the old days, like I said in the last show, coaches would tell us all the time, I'd rather have a guy going 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction than a guy that goes 10 miles an hour in the right direction. And we saw so many players this past season that were going 10 miles an hour in the right direction and just not making plays. And what's the point of that? Get these younger players experience, reps under their belt so they can understand, oh, look what I did wrong in this game. Oh, I didn't understand. I thought I understood that offense, right? It's like taking a test. You think you understand everything when you're studying, and then you take the test and you get a 60. With the curve, you get a 70. I'm talking about my son. And you thought you knew everything. You thought you were going to get 100. And then you go back and you talk to the teacher and you look at what you did and you realize, oh, wait a minute, I didn't actually understand what I thought I understood. And that's what happens to football players when they're young and they go into games. They think they know it all. They were dominating in high school. They think they got it figured out. And then they realize, oh, crap, I don't have it figured out. And that's when they make the big jump between year 1 and year 2 and year 2 and year 3. And it's hard to make that jump when you're not even playing and understanding that you don't understand what you think you understand. This was the opportunity this past year to do that. They didn't take the opportunity. Now next year's the next opportunity, and I'm hoping Mario Cristobal will get these guys action. Obviously spring practice, fall practice with the ones, against the ones, good on good. Maybe they can learn some of the stuff that they think they know that they don't know in those situations. And then early in the season, when they're non-conference games that matter but don't matter, right? Because you get in the ACC title game, you're in the playoffs if you win that, right? Get them the early reps. Keep them learning, keep them getting better instead of getting worse. We see the team get worse. And generally when a team gets worse, it's because you don't have these younger guys who are learning as they go, right? If you have a young player, an OJ Frederique, for instance, who starts at this level, and as he plays each game, you see these guys tend to get better. I know OJ had a bad game at the end, but they tend to get better as the year goes on. That's what happens with young players as they go through the process. I know some of them hit the wall, okay? That's a physical wall, not a mental wall. Mentally, they're going to get better and better. And that's when you have a really good young nucleus on a team with some older players mixed in. That's a great combination. And what they keep having is these little patchwork pieces from other programs that they plug in here and plug in there and throw in here and throw in there. And they don't get better and they don't grow as a team because they're all out for themselves, because they're 1 year here from a different culture, a different program. Their eyes are in the NFL. And towards the end of the season, they just don't want to get hurt. Okay, I'm sorry, I said it. Okay, I'm sorry I said it. That's what we saw in the final 3 games and of the season, in my opinion. Final 4 games of the season, even. And that's what doesn't happen when you have hungry young guys, a hungry team. Older guys who are being pushed by younger guys, and they don't want to be passed by in the last 3 games of the regular season and look like idiots when the NFL scouts turn on the tape and say, "Hey, so and so, why did you only play 10 reps in the final game of the regular season?" "Oh, well, this young guy worked really hard. He beat me out." Yeah, you're going to be drafted in the first 3 rounds? No. Like, those young guys need to push the older guys, need to be developed, need to play reps, and they haven't been doing it. They better freaking start doing it.
All right. So if you look at what they have at wide receiver on a seniority basis, you got CJ Daniels coming in from LSU. He'll be a senior. He's got ability without question, but LSU didn't use him properly and didn't really give him a chance to bust out. That's why he went in the portal. Miami will give him that opportunity to be a dude. We will see if he is good enough to do that. In the junior class, you got Ray Joseph. That's it. A lot of question about whether Ray Joseph is ever going to be good enough to play at Miami at wide receiver. He's probably down to his last spring practice to prove that he can. In the sophomore class, all you have is JoJo Trader. He's just getting started. Had a couple nice catches in the bowl game. We think he's going to be good, but we don't really know yet. And then the other 5 guys are freshmen: Nycar, Chance Robinson, Joshua Moore coming in, Dylan Upshaw, and Malachi Tony, who I think is going to be really good. But, man, this is an unproven group of receivers for the University of Miami. I hope that they can fortify this with 1 or 2 more guys in the portal. I think it's really, really, really important for next year. I know they feel that they can run the football. The offensive line figures to be really good. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But, man, there comes a point in football games where you got to be able to get it down the field, and it takes receivers. We saw what the receiver position did this year. I really believe they need to get better at wide receiver. So we'll see what continues to happen as portal season marches forward. All right, going to talk a little bit now about the offensive line, where Miami picked up their starting center for next year. James Brockemeyer started at Alabama, went to TCU. This kid's a stud. Great portal pickup. I think even Matt Shodell will agree. Does it make Miami better on the offensive line than 2024? Don't know that I could say that. I mean, we're swapping him out for Jalen Rivers. Zach Carpenter. I feel comfortable projecting Brockmeyer to be better than Carpenter. I don't have any problem, predicting that. Carpenter was okay. He had a solid season, but he wasn't great. Probably was not as good as Matt Lee the year before. I think, right. So I think Brockmeyer is a really good free. I would call him a free agent, Matt. That's a really good pickup. But we can't sit here now and say today that the O-line is going to be better when you got to replace Jalen Rivers. And, we will see, what happens in that regard. Inez Cooper is back. Markel Bell is back. Ryan Rodriguez should be a depth filler coming back off of injury. We mentioned Brockmeyer. Francis Manoa is back. Matthew McCoy is back. I'm told that Tommy Kinsler is getting ready to be a contributor on the offensive line. So he'll be in the mix. This is a huge spring practice for Okinola. His third one now. I mean, this is it, man. It's like he's got to prove that he can be a contributor at least in swing minutes on the O-line. They got two really good-looking young centers that they're going to be developing behind Brockemeyer in Nino Francavilla and SJ Alo Fatuli. I like where they are for the future at the center position. And then from there, you got a bunch of young freshmen that are still in developmental mode. But I know that Mario Cristobal feels very good about his offensive line position. I would say that's probably warranted, Matt. Going to be better? Probably not. But going to be as good? I would say, yeah, probably will be. I think Miami should be able to run the ball very effectively in 2025, and they are going to need to, regardless of what quarterback they potentially pick up in the portal, or if Emory Williams ends up reclaiming his mojo and being a starter. So the offensive line is in a good place. Okay, so now let's switch gears over to the defensive side of the ball and the defensive line, because to me, this is the most critical situation probably on the football team now that they picked up some transfer corners. They need some guys here to get it together and contribute. They've got 17 bodies, Matt, right now on the defensive line. A lot of candidates to fill 4 spots. But I still feel it comes down to Mesidor and Bain. Can those two guys become dudes again? Your thoughts on where they are at defensive line?
Well, yeah, I have always loved Mesidor and Bain. The only issue with them is they really both want to play defensive end, and they don't embrace the role of playing defensive tackle. And I wish they would, because honestly, they should play both. They should be inside in every passing down.
Mesidor looks bad inside. He doesn't. He needs to be outside. Mesidor. He did not look good inside this year.
I'm talking about because he didn't want to play there. I'm talking about passing situations where you could put rush ends, right? Because you got Malik Bryant, you got Cole McConaughey, you got other guys who really are good at rushing the passer that'll be off the field. And Bain and Mesidor, let's face it, they're heavier, bigger dudes. They're not quite as bendy, as athletic as these other defensive ends that are on the roster. And it wouldn't surprise me either, by the way, when the new coordinator comes in, if Malik Bryant goes back to linebacker. I mean, he's a 225-pound defensive end. They could certainly put him at the line if they want to, but if they're running a 4-3 in the new system, then, you need linebackers. And right now they don't have depth at linebacker at all, proven depth at linebacker. So that wouldn't shock me.
He might be a guy you could scheme with a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. You play him as a hybrid type. But regardless, the point is, I'm very comfortable with the defensive ends at Miami. I think I said it last year. I thought they would be the best defensive end groups in the ACC. They were not. But I still think they can be and will be. The question for me is defensive tackle. I thought the defensive tackle position wasn't terrible this past season. I think it was better than I thought it would be. But as you look to next year, they lose 2 or 3 guys in the rotation, 2 starters, obviously, and you're looking at maybe Ahmad Moten, the Blake kid. or Justin Scott are your probable 3 right now as we sit here, and I'm not sure they're going to really add any other major defensive tackle in the portal. I don't know, right? Because Justin Scott didn't get enough reps. He graded out pretty well in 110 reps or whatever, but he didn't play enough against real top teams where you could, and consistently, right, where you play the long game, right? You play the 50 reps and you see how he looks at the end of that game. He didn't really play enough to say he's going to be great. I think he can be great, but I don't know. The Blake kid is at Louisiana Tech. He did really well against the Power 4 team they played, which is fantastic. But as you look at him, he's I don't know how to put this. He's like he's quick for his size, but when you turn on his tape, he's not exceedingly strong, right? So that's his weaker. That's why he wasn't a Power 4 guy out of high school. And I'm not sure when he goes against these really big, strong interior offensive linemen that he's going to put up those tackles for loss and sacks that he did at Louisiana Tech. I don't know. I don't know. I know some of his tape looks great, but again, as you watch it closely, you don't see that bull rush, right? You don't see him shoving guys back. You see his quickness, right? He gets in gaps. He gets around guys. He has good spin moves and breaks free and gets after the quarterback. But when it's just like, hold your ground against a power run team, I don't know if he can do that yet. We're going to have to find out. And then, Ahmad Moten's good. I don't think he's great. And I don't think he's going to have this huge jump up like I think Justin Scott can, because he's already been around for a long time. So he's very serviceable. I'm hoping he doesn't start because I think they can do better. If he's starting, to me, that just means the tackles are, going to be okay. Nothing special.
I'm a little more concerned than you are for one reason. I don't see that dude. I don't see that dude outside pass rusher, a guy that can get after the quarterback.
Well, if Bain was hurt, right? Bain is that dude. He is that dude. He was just hurt a lot of the year, and he just never really came into his own. If he's healthy, he's that dude, 100%.
I hope you're right. But I'm concerned. I'm concerned that he's grown out of defensive end, that he needs to play defensive tackle. I don't know that that'll be in the plan. Maybe a new coordinator will see that and try to talk him into it. A lot can happen here between now and September. But I feel like they're a guy short. I think they're an elite pass rusher short.
Remember, there's also this: if they take a coordinator from an established program in college football, right? The second portal window, that coordinator maybe can bring in some of his key players from last year that are returning, right? That's the hope for me, because to me, as you look at the offense and you say, okay, well, every position technically is probably worse right now than it was a year ago for the same roster, even with the whatever portal people they've added. On defense, there's the potential to be a really, really good defense. As crazy as it sounds, being as bad as they were last year, with a new coordinator, bunch of new portal guys, development of some of the young guys like we mentioned Aguirre and Pruitt and there could be, we mentioned Justin Scott, right? McConaughey. There's a bunch of guys on that defense that haven't really had a chance yet, who could be really, really good. And if it all comes together on defense with a much better cornerback position, I would argue safety right now is the biggest concern. I'm not too worried about the linebackers, not too worried about the defensive line, other than maybe a defensive tackle short. But if those cornerbacks come through the way I think they can, that makes everything a lot smoother, right? The quarterback's holding the ball a split second longer. It just makes everything look a lot better when your corners are holding up versus what we saw last year. So I think this defense could be, I know it sounds crazy. I said it a month ago or 2 weeks ago after the season ended, whenever that was. I can't even remember when it was. 2 weeks ago. I said I think this could be a top 30 defense in the country next year. And I said it sounded crazy at the time, and I know it still sounds crazy, but I believe it. And I could see this offense being 50th in the country and the defense being 30th in the country, because Miami's problem forever now has been 1 year the offense is really, really good, and that year the defense is not good. And then it's the reverse. They've never had it.
Get both sides working together at the same time.
They've never had it at the same time in the last 22 years, where both sides of the ball are playing at a plus level. And if you have a top 30 defense and a top 50 offense, to me, that's 10 or 11 wins. I have no problem with that. And I think that's what we're going to see. So I'm optimistic, but very cautiously so, as you can tell when I say that every position is worse except for cornerback from last year's team. There's the potential to get there. So that's what has to happen. It's on the coaches. If the coaches fail, then we're going to know it by game 4 of next season. And if the coaches get it right, we'll know it by game 4 next season. But anything that you hear from now until September, whatever, take it with a grain of salt, whether it's from us or from somebody else. Like, that's the truth. Like, nobody's going to know. Everyone's going to be guessing. Oh, this guy looks great in the spring. Oh, that guy looks great in the fall. You know, it's all going to be nonsense until we see what some of these young guys can do to help complement the guys we already know that can perform.
All right. The linebacker class in this recent transfer portal cycle was not very good. Miami didn't even attempt to bring in a linebacker. I do think they'll be hunting for a linebacker in the spring portal, but they're going to go into spring practice with what they have. As we've mentioned multiple times, the big forward movement in this transfer portal haul is at cornerback, where they picked up 3 guys, Charles Brantley from Michigan State, Ethan O'Connor from Washington State. The hope is that both of those guys will be starter level players. And then developmental guy, Manuel Carnley from Arizona, and then a safety, Zachariah Poyser from Jacksonville State, who they're hoping can play next to Zaquan Patterson next fall. Zaquan Patterson will be one of the keys in spring and fall practice. Absolutely, Miami needs him to develop and be a guy next year. He had a lot of up and down moments in his true freshman season, but there's a lot of hope for Zaquan Patterson. They need him to be a big-time safety next year for this defense to be any good at all. We'll see what happens there. The last couple guys in the portal: kicker Carter Davis from FAU, long snapper Adam Booker from Charlotte.
Hey, let me ask you a question. I'm just curious, okay? Because a lot of people are very high on Poyser, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. Poyser was a 3-star recruit in 2023, redshirted, and then had a good year at, what was it, Jacksonville State or whatever?
Jacksonville State.
Where was it?
Jacksonville State is correct.
Yeah, Jacksonville State. That's what I said. Okay. Yeah. Here's my question to you, right? And now he's at Miami, and they're hoping he can start, like Gary said, across from Zaquan Patterson. If that kid had gone, let's say, to LSU, right? LSU had discovered him and took him on the roster. My guess is he still hasn't played. My guess is he would have been, a special teams guy this past season, would have redshirted like he did at Jacksonville State, because he wasn't good enough 2 years ago at Jacksonville State to play, right? He redshirted 2 years ago. This past season is when he started and did very well. So Miami's taken a guy who, in my opinion, in the real world, if he had gone to an LSU, an Ohio State, or wherever, a Power 4 team, I don't think he still would have played. And now Miami has him as a starting safety because he went to a lower level program and did well. So does that mean any recruit, a 4-star who goes to a level program and does well, who, would they just take that guy because he had a good season? This is what I can't ever wrap my head around when it comes to some of these guys. Like, athletically, he wasn't good enough at a high school 2 years ago. He wasn't good enough, in 2023 as a player at Jacksonville State to even get on the field much. And then he gets his chance and does well. So now all of a sudden, against lower level opposition, all of a sudden Miami's like, oh yeah, he's going to be great for us. That's what I'm not sure always works. That's why I don't have him as a free agent. I know other people do. Sometimes they hit, but I think more often than not, they don't in this type of situation. And that's what worries me. I want guys who are the Power 4 guys already, right? Who were at the LSUs, at the Ohio States as redshirt freshmen, as redshirt sophomores, doing well as starters. That's the guy that I know when he comes to Miami will do well. Brantley, healthy, I know will do really, really well at Miami. Xavier Lucas, if he goes in the portal like he plans to and winds up at Miami, I know he's going to do really, really well. Poyser, I don't know he's going to do well. So I don't know why fans get so excited about these guys that really probably would still be on the bench at other programs. And not
they want to be excited, Matt.
In practices, they're just guys.
They want to be excited. They want to be happy. They don't want to be concerned in
I
January.
like miserable people. I don't like happy people. I like miserable people. Shiny, Happy People by the REM is my most hated song in the world for good reason. I like dirty, miserable people.
All right, I wanted to touch on one other thing this morning that I don't even think you could be negative about, and that was the pickup over the weekend of some help for the player personnel department. And you guys have heard me comment on this in recent weeks. Improving the player personnel department, to me, and you guys don't really get to see it, obviously, but I feel like that is an area where Miami needs to get better. I don't know anything about this pickup, Taylor Edwards, other than the fact that Bill Belichick hired him at North Carolina, and then a couple days later, Mario Cristobal stole him away. Taylor Edwards came from South Carolina. He was their director of player personnel. I'm going to do some more looking into him here. It's just been busy over the weekend, but he'll be coming to Miami to fortify the personnel department. I don't know if they'll restructure it or what they'll do, if this is just the first move of more to come. Great move by Mario, though, just philosophically, because things have changed in college football. You're not just recruiting 18 to 25 kids out of high school anymore. You're recruiting between traditional recruiting and the transfer portal about 40 players a year, okay, at least. And properly vetting them is very difficult, especially the transfers where you're making snap decisions. You got to move quickly, and you don't really have the chance to properly vet these kids. And having a proper personnel department, and I think it needs to be NFL level. I mean, I think not only do you have to have scouting on your own players, scouting on the kids that you're recruiting, but you better have scouting on the other top teams in the country, so that when kids off those teams go in the portal, you know whether you really want to recruit that kid or not. That's what they do in the NFL. They have grades on pretty much every player in the league. Because you get the same thing, free agency, trades. So I would like to see Miami continue to move in this direction. On the face value of it, very excited that Mario Cristobal is choosing to do that. And we'll look more into Mr. Edwards and comment more.
Yeah, I can add something if you want.
Yeah, again.
First of all, this is an aside, but that guy, what's his name, Taylor Edwards, right? I mean, he's definitely going to succeed, because if you look at him, I mean, just look at him. He looks like Elon Musk and Bill Gates had a baby. That's what he looks like. Okay, so how can he fail? But what I was going to say is, and football should do this also. Okay, I know I'm a baseball guy, so I know there's some baseball teams out there, Major League Baseball teams. I don't know if college programs do it, but they literally have software engineers and AI guys or whatever who create programs where, like, how in Madden you could like play out a whole season, right, with your players or whatever and whatever. So they create a program where you can literally plug in players into your lineup that you want to maybe get, and then run a simulation where that lineup will play 500 million games of a regular season, and you could see what your record would wind up being. And apparently a lot of these programs, they come pretty close to reality, and at the end of the day, like, you can get all these, Bill Gates / Elon Musk clones like Mario did, stealing them from Belichick. But like, I want Miami to get that program. I want Miami to develop that program, right? That's what has not come to college football yet, where you can game out, you put in this guy's attributes, what he's done at that level program against these opponents, whatever. And the AI thing goes, and it says, do not spend more than $150,000 on him, or whatever the hell it is. Like, you can write that program, right? I can't write it, but Siri or somebody out there, Mr. Siri, I don't know. Like, that's what Miami needs. They don't need all these freaking talking heads at the end of the day. There are data points that you can take from Jacksonville State's. At some point, Jacksonville State will have a bunch of people that have been taken in the portal at various schools that have had this much success, that much success, whatever. And you can game out how they performed at Power 4 schools, run a program off of that based on what this new guy did at that program, and then tabulate what he'll do at your program and how he'll mix in, because that's the big mystery, right? I tell Gary all the time that Gary will look at every player's highlight film from high school and be like, this guy's amazing, right? I'm like, they're highlights. They're highlights.
Well, I don't have time to watch total games.
That's the thing, right? So now Miami, this personnel guy, how many hours in a day are there? 5,000? No. There's 1,000 players that go in the portal. You need literally probably 100 people, like Taylor, whatever the hell his name is, to be hired to go through every minute of film these guys have. These guys are not watching every minute of film. You don't have time to do that on every player. Now, when you narrow down to a certain player, you can look more closely at him, right? But if you're just watching highlights, they're not putting on the plays where the guy got beat for a 40-yard touchdown on the highlight film, right? You got to find it through hours and hours of
I want
through
people
tape.
talking more to people in the high schools, talking to the janitors, talking to
I'm
the
talking about I'm talking about portal guys. Portal guys I'm talking about, because I'm talking about the program. But yeah, I mean, high school, of course, you still do the old school thing, but high school recruiting doesn't matter anymore. That's the sad truth, you know.
I think that's going to change, though. I think the roster sizes are going to come down. I think high school kids, I think the freshmen are going to have to play more. I think that's going to evolve back in the other direction. I really do. But we'll see what happens. But
what I'm saying is it doesn't matter in the sense that you're not winning a championship with high school kids right now. You know, you're winning a championship with a few kids that you recruited that stuck around, and then a bunch of guys that you stole from other programs, and great coaching. Like that's how you win championships now. You know, unfortunately, I don't like the new system. I want players to get paid, but I just wish there was a way to do it where it didn't harm the sport so much. You know, it's just become a me. You know, handout. I mean, listen to Jim Larinage's press conference. He put it perfectly. You know, I mean, he quit because his players want money. You know, and they care more about having their hand out than having their hand on the basketball trying to score, and that's a big problem.
Yeah. All right, a couple other things I want to mention before we go this morning. We have our latest Inside the Lines feature on the website. It's on Clinton Portis' son, 4-star 2026 cornerback, and Miami commit Camden Portis. Make sure you check that out. We have a coach's take on the 2025 4-star cornerback from New Iberia Westgate. That would be Jabari Antoine. Check that one out. An update with Fort Lauderdale St. Thomas Aquinas wide receiver Amari Stevens. He's already building a tight bond with the Hurricanes, even though he's a 2027 prospect. Stephen Wagner takes a look at the 5 2026 prospects he thinks that the Hurricanes are making the best progress with. You check that out. We also have get the opinion of Charles Power, On3's director of scouting and rankings, about a number of Miami signings. Make sure you check that out. And we have some obligatory coverage of the basketball team. Boy, what a frustrating season they are having. They may not win a game in the ACC the way this is going. They had Virginia Tech beat the other day and blew it down the stretch. Florida State up next this week. So we do have some coverage on the basketball program as well. But that's going to do it for this morning for Good Morning CaneSport. We thank you so much for starting your day out with us. If you're on YouTube right now, hit your subscribe and like buttons. It helps us with the algorithms at YouTube and growing our audience. If you are not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, please hop on over, join our community, become a subscriber. It's your subscriptions that allow us to do what we do every single day, whether it be our website, where we're trying to make you guys the most educated fans in America, to shows like this. So please become a member at CaneSport.com. Totally appreciate all you guys that have. So for Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Ferman. Thank you again for joining us this morning, and we will see you next time, everybody.